Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Building from Ground Up, Season 2, Episode 2. So excited, but this is our first episode of the new year, and we have two amazing panelists who are joining us today. It's very late where they are, so we're super grateful that you guys could make out time to speak with us and to speak with our audiences as well. My name is Koromane Koroye. I am Tech Cabal's managing editor, and today we're speaking to Vivian and Joao. I've been working on pronouncing your name since yesterday, and I hope I got it right. Or can I call you JP during this conversation?
Yeah, sure.
I love it. Okay, so we have Vivian and JP. Vivian is the CEO of Medsaf, and JP is co-founder. Vivian is co-founder and CEO of Medsaf, and JP is co-founder and COO of Medsaf. And we're going to be speaking to them about what they're doing, building their business, and what it means to be an entrepreneur building, especially for a country like Nigeria and for the continent as well. But before we, CTO, sorry, JP is CTO, not COO. I'm so sorry CTO, for mislabeling your role. JP, he's CTO, Chief Technical Officer. Okay, so the Building from Ground Up series seeks to bring together founders across the Nigeria and UK tech ecosystem to share their stories of building and scaling. In December last year, we had Etop Ipe, who is the CEO of AutoCheck. We had him speak on the first episode of the season. It was a very, very useful session. If you missed it, a link to the video will be provided in the chat room for you to catch up. So expect that from Sultan. And then before we actually speak to Vivian and JP, I'm going to invite the country director at the UK Nigeria Tech Hub, Adaize, to tell us more about the series. I believe Adaize is on the call.
Hi, hello.
Hello. Hi, Adaize. Good morning.
Good morning. Sorry, not sure what's wrong with my video. I'm not able to see. Okay, there we go.
Yes, I can see it. Yeah, we can see now.
Oh, okay. Hi, everybody. Really glad to be here. My name is Adaize Shoko, and I'm the country director for the UK Nigeria Tech Hub. And like you're seeing on the screen, we are an initiative of the UK's Government Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sports, DCMS, to support the growth of the local digital economy in Nigeria. And the Nigeria Hub is one of 5 hubs across the continent. We have one in Kenya and South Africa, in Brazil and Indonesia. And we're really excited to be part of this initiative to stimulate local digital economies. And our focal areas are in 3 main blocks. One is to build high-end digital skills. So all our software engineers and product designers and the guys building innovative solutions on the continent, our work borders around supporting them to build those talents and use that to create innovative solutions. The second part of our work is the startup ecosystem building. And what that means is supporting the growth of startups, supporting the growth of early stage financiers to support startups, supporting regulations. We're very happy to be supporting the Nigerian Startup Bill, which we're very proud about. So that focuses around startup ecosystem building. And lastly, to foster linkages and trade between UK and Nigeria, if it's about helping startups think about scaling their businesses and setting up their companies in the UK, or driving investments in Nigeria. So we're really, really excited to be supporting and working with Tech Cabal in doing this series, Building from the Ground Up. And we're hopeful that this series would be an opportunity to inspire and cause you to want to build your own companies, or grow your own companies, or scale your own companies as you listen to the stories and experiences from experienced entrepreneurs on the continent that we bring to the table. I'll leave you with this last few words, especially to those who are starting out in their careers as entrepreneurs, or those who are already entrepreneurs. I summarize it as CARE, C-A-R-E. You need to understand that this is a calling, because the future of Africa, I believe personally, will be built by entrepreneurs and innovators leveraging tech and innovation to solve complex problems on the continent. So you have to see this as a calling to fulfill this mission, right, that you've been given, to use your solutions and your businesses to really tackle problems scalably and sustainably. Second A is you have to be ambitious enough, right? And audacious enough to tackle these solutions. You can't try and play safe. I don't think entrepreneurship is about playing safe. So you have to be really ambitious and think big and think strategically in how you're going to solve these problems. The R is about being resilient enough and responsible enough to achieve results. So you have to make sure that whatever you're doing, you don't just have a big vision and big ideas, but it has to be measurable. You have to think about what results, tangible results am I going to be measuring? And you need to be excellent enough to evaluate that you are actually achieving these results and creating the impact that you want to create, depending on the metrics that you've designed for yourself. So I'll leave you with those acronyms, and I'm sure that you will hear more from the speaker today about experience. But I just am grateful that we are collaborating, and I wish us a very fruitful conversation, and very happy to connect with anyone who wants to connect with us. You can follow us on our social media handles on Instagram, on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me at Deseshoko on LinkedIn. And I'll be happy to tell you more about what we do and answer more questions. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Adeze. That was great. I hope somebody caught the acronyms. I think it's AARE, if I'm not mistaken, right? I hope so.
It's C-A-R-E, care.
Sorry, C-A-R-E. Yes, C-A-R-E. Excuse me, C-A-R-E. Thank you so much. Okay, so let me introduce our panelists for today, and I'm going to give them a chance to talk about what they do at Medsaf with more details, and then we're going to dive right into the conversation. By the way, we're going to be speaking about how to keep your startup afloat with little or no funding, or what we call in the ecosystem, we call it bootstrapping. So in the midst of all the amazing fundraising rounds that we're hearing about and people raising crazy amounts of money, especially African entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who are building for Africa. Very little is said about founders who have to bootstrap for a period of time before they, get their Series A or Series B or whatever the case may be. So first, we have Vivian. Vivian is the CEO of Medsaf. She is a serial entrepreneur and strategist that has created and innovated around execution in the healthcare, pharmaceutical, and energy space. She's an award-winning founder, having received recognition from Forbes, the British Royal Family, Women in Africa, Seed Stars, and many more as a high-impact entrepreneur. She brings an innovative approach learned from earlier moments in her career. She has won a myriad of awards for being a leader in sales. She was one of the youngest in her region to manage a multi-million-dollar per year Wells Fargo mortgage branch. Also, she led a political campaign in Chicago's South Side and gained endorsements and funding from powerful unions. She has been covered in Reuters, CNN, Forbes, Financial Times, and AFP. Vivian attended University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign with a BA in psychology and sociology. She also attended the Global Partners Program and studied business in the United States, France, and Brazil. So I think it's safe to say that we're speaking to a multifaceted and multi-talented woman. Thank you, Vivian, for joining us. Please go ahead and give a short intro about yourself.
Thank you. I wish you could always do our intros. That was so nice.
Call me anytime.
So my name is Vivian Nwakah. I'm founder of Medsaf. I'm here with my co-founder, Joao.
Hi.
Hello. So Medsaf is a pharmaceutical platform to finance and facilitate the movement of medications in emerging markets. We're tackling the fake and substandard medication issue using a suite of technology products and strategies to reduce the friction of movement of medications and increase access, affordability, and quality of medications in emerging markets. So just a bit of background, I came to Nigeria in 2013 for the very first time, had firsthand experiences with negative experiences with the healthcare industry, and a friend of mine died from taking a fake malaria pill. At the time, there were no pharmaceutical technology startups, or no one was talking about startups as it pertains to healthcare, but I was watching this rise in tech adoption, the rise of Jumia and Konga, and all of those other great companies that kind of launched Nigeria's tech ecosystem. And I just really analyzing the issue in the healthcare space, I said, well, this can also be applied, this type of disruption can also be applied to the healthcare sector to actually increase and to improve a lot of the fundamental issues that are impacting the healthcare industry as a whole. And I was very much aware that it wasn't just a Nigeria problem, but that it's actually a worldwide problem, a global issue. And my hypothesis was that if we could build something in Nigeria to solve this really intensely complicated issue, and that if we could find success, that we could actually scale our solution across the world, and that we could create a new way to think about patient pharmaceutical products and how patients actually get to interact with those products, and really use tech to drive us into a new era as it pertains to the pharmaceutical industry. So that was the big vision back in 2016, when I then met people like Joao, who helped put some of the pieces together. So I'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. My name is Joao. It's pronounced Joao, but you can call me JP. And I'm CTO of Medsaf. My background is essentially developing software products for the e-commerce. I've worked with huge marketplaces, some of them Vivian mentioned, like Jumia and Lazada. In the last few years, I've been working also within the cybersecurity field, and I have plenty of experience designing and scaling e-commerce solutions and software products in general. Vivian?
Yep. So
Yes.
that's
Yeah,
who
we got it.
are. That's what Medsaf is. We've been in operations since 2017. We started in Lagos, and today we started in Lagos in a little tiny office in Victoria Island. That's probably felt like a closet at some points in time. Now we have been able to scale the company from not only Lagos, but we're in almost 20 states across Nigeria. We've grown, at least over 500% since we obviously launched the company. And within this COVID time period, we've grown about 200%. So COVID was really actually instrumental for us to really be able to say that we've kind of got that momentum that we really need to fulfill this vision. And we have about 45 team members across Nigeria, US, and Portugal. And yeah, I would love to answer any questions. I'm not quite sure the format that you want to do this, but I can ramble as well.
We're welcome rambling, that's fine. So it's going to start off, we're going to get into the conversation. So I'm going to be asking the both of you questions. And then the audience is also welcome to send in questions into the Q&A box. There's a Q&A box there. Sultan will walk you guys through how that works. Please, the questions you ask should be in some ways related to the conversation we're having now, or anything that has to do with building a startup, bootstrapping, fundraising. But we want, even about the pharmaceutical or health tech industry in Africa, in Nigeria, but we want the questions to apply to what both Vivian and JP are doing with Medsaf, or connected to their experience in the industry. So before we get into the questions, we do want to correct something. In the newsletter email we sent out with the invitation, we mentioned that Medsaf has raised $1.4 million, but they've actually raised $2.7 million, and they're gearing up for Series A. So in addition to all the wonderful milestones that Vivian has shared with us, we can look forward to them announcing that Series A and what it will mean for the business as a whole. Okay, so let's get started. So first question, really, I actually want to talk about bootstrapping and your thoughts, your experience with it, Vivian and JP. I mean, working for as long as you have, and obviously then making that decision to leap into putting together a company and building it. What does bootstrapping mean to you, and what role does it play in the initial growth phase of a startup or a business?
Definitely. So the reality is that I left my job in 2016 to start working on Medsaf full time. So I mean, I had to make that decision that I was going to forego a paycheck. I was going to forego a paycheck, and at that time I was getting paid in dollars in Nigeria. I was pretty comfortable, and I had to say, okay, I'm going to step away from that, and I'm going to take this leap of faith. So I will talk about I wouldn't say that we are 100% bootstrap company, but I will talk about the strategy and just how, we're able to kind of get funding in those early days. So obviously the earliest days were just my own funds. I really just everything was fell on my head. When I met with Joao, so I actually went to Portugal and really kind of started to look around the tech ecosystem there. And I went to Portugal because I knew that Portugal was the base of the Rocket Internet. And I knew that, Jumia, which was a subsidiary of Rocket Internet at the time, I knew that people that were working from a tech perspective on on those projects would have an understanding of Africa, and that ecosystem would be good to kind of get into to see how someone could support Medsaf's vision. So the lucky thing is that I met someone like Joao. I had heard about him. Everyone kept saying, you need to meet Joao. He's, a leader in this space. He's well known. He's really, really good. You should just meet him. And Joao actually agreed to just join Medsaf. We didn't iron out finances because there were none. But I think what I love about Joao and will always love about Joao is that, he knew me from nowhere. I came to Europe from Lagos and talked to him about this problem that doesn't impact Europe at all. And, he, saw the passion, and he saw, the vision of what I was trying to build. And he said, I'll be part of this as best as I can. And that meant a lot in the early days. So back in 2016, when we didn't have any funding, it was the people who were just passionate about the concept itself that helped us gain the momentum. Now, I had I did one of my best career experiences, or most exciting career experiences, was running a political campaign. And I remember being able to motivate people and mobilize people in the middle of Chicago winters to actually come out and knock on doors in below zero weather for free. And I remember that what was really driving everybody was this concept that they believed, that everyone believed in the same thing, that we all wanted the same things, and we had a rallying call. And so for Medsaf, really early on, I created the rallying call, and that is quality medication is a fundamental human right. And that concept that healthcare is the great equalizer, and that everybody has a story around healthcare and why it should be accessible and affordable and quality for every human being. That was Medsaf's initial rallying call, and people like Joao and a ton of other mentors and participants helped us gain that momentum in those first early days because they believed in that. So that's the most I can really say about bootstrapping, only because by the end of 2016, we had already started to receive our first angel checks. So it's really the angel community and those early investors that were investing $5,000, and just really just believing in the concept and believing in me, that helped us gain the real momentum when we launched in January of 2017.
Great, thank you so much, Vivian. That was really insightful. JP, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, actually, regarding the initial bootstrap process, as Vivian told you, when we met, she did the, let's call it the pitch about her idea and the problem that she was trying to solve, and it's a concrete, actual problem. It's not like it's a bit different from selling consumer electronics or fashion online. So of course, if I could help, I would help to bootstrap the company. And one of the things that it's a bit of advice in terms of bootstrapping these kind of companies are to create something from scratch that is very focused on tech, is to first focus on the initial MVP. So basically create something that works, that you can present to people and ask for money. And the other thing is keep it simple. Boring is good. So use tried and true technology. In our case, we leverage a ton of open source solutions to help us build our initial stack. And this actually allowed us to start the actual company in I believe Vivian 2 months, 3 months, something like that, right? So it was quite fast from just the concept. Let's try and do this and have an actual site, a working site where people could log in and start purchasing stuff. So I think that my underlying message or the base message is boring is good. Be practical in terms of technology. Often you will find developers or CTOs going around and trying new stuff because Facebook is using, Google is using, or because it's the next big thing. The thing is, you can do most of the things that you need with technology that is tried and true, that is well documented, and you usually don't have the scalability of Facebook or Google. So if we focus on what we actually need instead of what we would desire in the long term, it's easier to achieve better results. And this was one of the key drivers as I was working in part-time. So basically the initial implementation was done in my spare time. We just focused on what was essential to make it work, and because we needed to have the proof of concept. And what happens is that you usually don't build a software product or a technology stack and that's it. It's an iterative process. And when you are starting a company, you may have a concrete idea of what is your market and what you are trying to achieve. But I can guarantee you that past 1 year, your goals will be different and your needs in terms of technology will be different. And 1 year from that year, the requirements will also be different. So there's an evolution. We should focus, or at least my recommendation is to focus on what you have on your plate, what you need to be solved in the short term, instead of at least on the first years, instead of trying to use, for example, new and exciting libraries and products that may have issues that are unforeseen. And in the end, you are spending time both building your product and trying to learn and diagnose newer software solutions. And this is something that I've worked with other startups before, and this is something that is at least in my perspective, is necessary. It's necessary to be pragmatic regarding tech. Tech is a tool that we use to solve problems. I love development. I love to build software. I love to build things. But in the end, it's a tool to achieve a purpose. And in our case, our purpose is to make sure that we can guarantee that the people can access medication that is stored properly, that is not counterfeit medication. And we can make, if possible, to even improve the range of medication that is available for purchase in different regions, in this case in Nigeria. This is the purpose. Tech is just a way of doing stuff.
Thank you so much. I love what you said about technology being a tool. right? It is a way for us to build, it is a way for us to create impact. So I want to stay on the fundraising question because there are a couple of founders on the call, and I'm sure they're very curious about how you were able to transition out of bootstrapping or funding the business in the beginning with your own money to then eventually raising your first funding round. How did that feel like? What was that experience like for you? And then I also want to ask about how you attract the right talent, especially in the earlier stages of the business. How do you attract talent while you're still trying to raise money or before you start raising money?
Well, I mean, I think the story of Joao is my biggest success as it pertains to people, because I was just able to connect with him and get him to be
easy.
part of that. Sorry?
I'm easy.
Yeah. So, you know, he was my greatest success, but I definitely have a lot of lessons in that area that I could talk about. As far as raising the money, look, you guys, this right now is such a different time. You know, I feel like, you know, we launched in 2017. I don't even know how many companies are still alive from that period of time. You know, it's just such a different ecosystem now. The stories that I used to hear about fundraising, all the horror stories, it seems like now the market has just graduated just to a much more sophisticated level, which I just think is awesome. So if there's a lot of people here, you know, thinking about starting a company now, wow, you guys are so lucky with all the resources and the way that things are now. Back then, though, you know, I just had, you know, the biggest thing that I could do was talk about this concept to every single person that I met. And I was absolutely obsessed with talking about Medsaf all day long. And that's literally how I was able to get the first investors. And what I wanted to do was target investors who I felt were had achieved some success and had really done well in an African context and in a global context, investors who I could look up to. And so I, you know, targeted some key people and I just talked to them about Medsaf every single time that I could. I remember Bastian Goddard of Oroko TV invested in Medsaf, and I pitched him like maybe 20 times, I think. You know, for him to finally invest in Medsaf. You know, back then, healthcare technology was not anything that anybody really cared for. So many investors at that time had told me that, you know, healthcare tech is not scalable. It's not needed. And I was like, wait a minute, there's millions of people in Africa that take a medication or go to the hospital. Like, how is this not scalable? But anyways, there was a lot of doubt in those early days. And so I think that the biggest thing that I have is just resilience and drive and a deep passion for what I knew Medsaf could be. And so I just kept going and just pitching people consistently, constantly.
Thank you for that, Vivian. I don't know if you or JP want to speak into attracting talent. I mean, you talk about JP being a huge success story for you, right? And I know that there are a lot of founders who are trying to find CTOs to join their company because talent is so scarce now. So can you talk to us about what it looked like? You talked about your team expanding, right? From this little office to now being in multiple locations, right? How are you able to attract talent from 2017 up until now?
Like, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's the hardest part. And when I started the company, I wasn't thinking that HR would be the hardest part of building the business. I just we were just really lucky with people who wanted to be a part of it and were giving their all to really push the company forward. But as we grow, you then start to kind of learn those really hard lessons about HR in an African or Nigerian context. You know, for one, in those days, pharmacists and other healthcare, you know, professionals would have rather have worked for a pharmacy chain or for a hospital or for a government.
Yeah.
And so because Medsaf was one of the very first healthcare technology companies in Nigeria, the concept was so unknown that it was excruciatingly hard to get people to join Medsaf in the beginning, because where's the job stability, right? If you're a pharmacist, you've gone to school for all these years, and now you are looking to get some job stability, maybe open up your own pharmacy. That's the path, right? But we needed pharmacists to say, hey, leave that path and come join us on this really crazy journey where we may or may not last. And, we want to change the world with technology, so it just was a hard pitch. But I'm so proud of where we are today. We have a lot of our team members who went back to school, and realized, I think Medsaf was one of the very first companies to start talking about, it's the supply chain, create the transparency on the supply chain. We're using technology to disrupt the supply chain. And then all of a sudden, you now have pharmacists going back to school or business school for supply chain management, and seeing that as a cool way to push their career forward. And we have so many employees that then just invested in themselves and started taking classes around supply chain and other types of areas that would support what we are doing and where we're going in the future. And so I really feel, watching the journey of Medsaf, that we saw people who, potentially when they first started wouldn't really have been able to kind of help us, at the more advanced stages, but that we're leveling up and realizing that this technology, this new world of technology companies in their industry was opening up a whole new avenue for career growth. And so the amount of people we have, one of our great team members is now going to Canada for his MBA. So he's like people are changing their entire lives. These pharmacists, and majority of our team members are pharmacists, are now changing their entire lives and moving into new career paths that they never would have without Medsaf. And so I'm really proud of that. And I think that that's really what's necessary in general, as it pertains to HR, in the tech ecosystem, is we're charting new territory. And so it takes people who are just really taking a chance, and can see the vision and are futuristic, and have the confidence to try something new and push themselves. And the reality is that's not always easy for a young pharmacist, in our case, to do, right? They have bills to pay, family to take care of. So it's really hard. It's really a challenge for sure. But you just have to keep, I would say what has worked for us was just, the reinvesting in people worked for us to get us to the next level. And now that Medsaf has grown, that we've scaled, we've proven ourselves, the ecosystem is now more ready to talk about healthcare tech and invest in companies. We now have an amazing management team full of heavy hitters, and experts in their own industry. And so I'm so happy right now just of the caliber of people that we have at Medsaf who can really take it to the next level. But it definitely was a struggle, and it was probably our biggest struggle of the entire company.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm sure that a lot of what you said was useful to the founders on the call. JP, in terms of sourcing for technical talent as the company is growing, what has your experience been like in that area?
So basically, it's important to say that while I was in the bootstrapping process, there was a time that I wasn't in the company. I basically came back for the CTO role some months ago, and we have at that point we already had some of our current team members on board. And one of the things that we have that actually works quite well is that we have a great team leader that was recruited by Vivian, and he's able to actually scout for talent. What I can tell you is that my experience, not only on Medsaf, but in other companies as well, has been basically terrible. It's very, very difficult nowadays to recruit talent, especially if the company is not a huge company. If you are a multi-million dollar company with international presence, it's way easier for you to recruit. Smaller companies are quite more challenging because they don't offer the same prestige or dimension that often developers are trying to look. But at least in my experience, there are some other things that may help, and one of the things is autonomy and personal growth. Usually, most developers, what they want is to learn new stuff and to evolve as in the personally. So basically, not only in terms of career, but also they want to go to a job and feel by 6 months that they are better now. They are better engineers than what they were when they got on board. And fortunately, in our specific case, we do have that because we are still moving very, very fast in terms of technology. We are building new stuff every day. And this is something that we can offer that often other bigger companies can't, because they already have their own systems. And while they implement new stuff also, the pace is slower because the bigger the machine gets, the slower the gears will turn. So this is something that we can offer. You will work with a greater degree of independence. We will expect you developer to be able to work in a more autonomous fashion and be proactive in terms of identifying problems or potential pitfalls on our specific implementations or on our specific architectural designs. And this is something that appeals at least to a specific segment of the available developers. So this is usually the pitch. We are small, but we are growing fast, and you can grow with us. But yeah, the market is quite difficult, and it's literally, it has been crazy. And with the COVID event globally, that has been last year was the big change. Everyone switched jobs, including myself. So it's a challenge.
Thank you so much, JP. I hope you guys can still hear me. Zoom just sent a message that my network's a bit unstable. Can you hear me just fine? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Okay, so I want us to just speak about how you were able to, there's a question from an audience member who asked how you're able to balance keeping a job up until you actually transition to now running the company full time. So Sarah Blakely, who runs Spanx, she kept her full-time job up until she was featured on Oprah's, up until Spanx was featured on Oprah's Favorite Things, and then she quit and started to run Spanx full time. So can you talk to us about that transition from working full time and, like you said, Vivian, having this job where you were comfortable and it was fine, to then saying, okay, I am going to decide to take the reins of this company and drive it forward. Can you share some things that went through your mind and how you were able to come to that decision?
Honestly, I am someone who believes in focus. If I had 2 jobs while building Medsaf, I would not have, the Medsaf would not exist. It is an extremely hard company to build and to run. And it's an intense operation that we have. We have a massive vision, and it requires 100% attention. When I left my job, I said I left knowing that I was going to have to put 100% of my attention on putting the foundation together for Medsaf. So at no point was I able to work another job while building Medsaf, but Joao did, right? And, you know, from my perspective, I didn't feel that, you know, the part-time or work whenever you can was really so successful, right? It was pretty hard, you know, to work in that way, in my opinion. So I just don't, I don't think that if you're really, I don't think for this concept that it could have taken a part-time effort at all for this concept.
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, JP, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so and my experience, because Vivian actually mentioned that when I started with her, I did have a job. Is that basically I'm a tech guy, and usually tech guys do lots of work in their own spare time. And what happened is some of that work was for Medsaf. So the requirements weren't that demanding that would require, for example, weeks and weeks of effort in my part, because again, boring is good. So let's see what we have that is open source and that we can use to bootstrap this. So at least in my end, it was possible. But I do understand what Vivian is saying. Some years ago, I had my own company, and it was a nightmare to basically manage everyday stuff. It's a nightmare. So it's quite complicated to articulate that with a daily job 9 to 5. So in the end, you will work 12 hours a day. And actually, when I started working at Rocket in Porto, I believe in 2011, it has opened. It was a recent company here in Portugal, and I was still working on my own company. So I was working 12 or 14 hours a day, and it just drained me. It was very, very difficult. So I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, I bet that founders would burn out very quickly if they were still trying to keep a full-time job while trying to also grow and scale a company. So we did not recommend that. Okay, so we have a question here about which technologies or what technologies are you finding serve developing markets best, right? In your experience, Vivian and JP, building for developing markets, what are you, in terms of technology and the impact it's having, what are you finding best served in market, especially like Nigeria or other African countries, or even in Europe as well? What do you think is working in terms of technology?
Well, I'll let Joao answer that, but definitely I find it really interesting going back and forth with Joao about the tech needs, because Europe is just so, it's so different. And in my opinion, I feel like you know, Africa has this opportunity to leapfrog Europe and the US and really push into the future. So for me, it seems super exciting. Joao always is just the one pulling me back to reality of, okay, this is what you can do to date.
Yeah.
Joao.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I understood the question. Do you want to know about challenges in big picture challenges, or do you want to know specifics about stack?
We can do big picture challenges and how technology, or what technology you feel like right now is actually solving some of these big picture challenges.
So the obvious one is internet coverage in Nigeria and Africa in general. So basically, the connections are crap. And keep in mind, we started this 2016, right? So 16, 17. So at that time, the internet penetration in the market was even lower than what it is today. So in the past few years, and again, COVID was also a huge responsible in terms of boost of people having cell phones relying on cell phones for communication, mobile communication, and internet access for remote work. So all of this is quite new, because in 2016, 2017, one of the challenges that we have was, for example, customers that didn't have a way of purchasing stuff because they didn't have an internet connection, things like that. These kind of markets also have other problems. One of them is how do you solve track and trace? Because in Europe, this is something that everyone expects, that everyone has an address, everyone has a door number. Most couriers will deliver stuff without any issue, but in Africa it doesn't work that way. So basically, and you may have a good experience in a region or on a specific city, and when you are outside of the big city, everything falls apart because no one will deliver what you were trying to deliver. So this is also another challenge. And again, we on top of that, we have the problem that there is a thing called latency, which is the time that takes for the communications, the digital communications, to travel from one place to the other. And for example, we are currently working with Google solution, Google Compute Cloud, in the US. So basically, we don't have local resources in terms of IT servers in the continent, and this adds lag. So basically, this means that the platforms aren't as responsive as they could be if they were nearer the customers. And this, at least for some applications, this may be an issue. In our specific case, it's not. But let's say that we are building, I don't know, voice over IP communication, something a bit like Zoom or whatnot. This may be a huge problem, and this is something to take into account, because what happens is, usually, the countries have 1, 2, 3 major providers that will connect to the rest of the world, and if those providers have a hiccup, part of the country will be without internet. So it will affect your availability. So you can use the best system that you have, you can get the best provider, but in the end, the cables may fail, or somewhere, or some of the companies that manage stuff may fail, and you don't have a way of having redundancy. So the routing capabilities, the internet itself is a bit, let's call it self-healing. So when something happens and there's a cable that snaps, and sometimes it happens, traffic gets rerouted through other paths. But in Africa, Africa is not that well connected. It has improved in the past years, but it's still not that well connected. So any kind of downtime related to international connectivity will affect your service. And one other anecdotal experience that I had that is not related to Medsaf, but it's related to the topic. Some years ago, when I was working at Rocket, I believe it was Lazada that had that sold to Indonesia. And one of the problems that we had was when you are calculating, for example, fees for delivery, you have your postal code, and you have a set of carriers, and you have a postal code. And in case of Indonesia, they had like 150,000 postal codes. So the systems, the traditional e-commerce systems, weren't able to calculate that fast enough, because it was too much data for the kind of algorithms that were implemented, because it was probably implemented by an European guy. He thought, okay, we have a couple of thousand postal codes, but in that specific case, the matrix was quite complex. So all of this stuff are the things to take into account when tackling new markets. Finally, speaking of stack, we are currently building our, let's call it third iteration of the technology stack. Initially, we started with a dedicated server in European data center. That worked quite well. And it was a Magento store. So initially it was a Magento store. We then evolved to have a full-blown ERP that is based on an open source solution, but that is working on Google Cloud environment. So with better redundancy, better scalability, and it also integrates well with other satellite sites that we have and other digital tools that we have. And now we are building a third iteration that is, let's call it a custom design one. It's a process, and will be the major focus of this year. That will also be in Google Cloud.
Thank you so much. You're right about internet penetration as it stands on the continent. I know that there's some countries that are doing better than other countries, but as fantastic as the product is, especially when it's leveraging technology, internet penetration is important. You want the people who you want to access your product to be able to access it and to be able to communicate with the product as quickly as possible. So thank you for sharing this insight. We're getting ready to move into answering some of the questions in the Q&A box. There are a lot of questions here. So
I've been answering.
Yeah, I'm seeing you typing some questions out, and Vivian and JP, I don't know if you guys are cool with answering even some of the questions you've actually responded to already, because I don't know how many people will be able to look at the answered questions. I don't know if they have access to that, but there's a really interesting one here about the myth around raising funding if you're not a fintech company. And I love your response here about fintech being the backbone, but it is a myth, right? Because, first of all, it's hard to get funding, period, right? Like anyone that talks about raising funds for their startup will tell you that it's not an easy process. But in Nigeria, we have seen that a lot of fintech companies have raised a lot of money, even across the continent as well. So can you just shed some light on your response here about the role fintech plays and how non-fintech founders can look at what fintech companies are doing and learn from it?
Yeah. So take it back, even further back to the rise of the telecoms, right? That is the original infrastructure that had to be in place for cell phones, right? Then, and also internet access. And then you've got the rise of these, next generation banks, the GT banks, the banks that were easy to use. And now you've got this rise of fintechs. All of these, infrastructure, type categories are extremely important for all other startups, right? In Medsaf, just to give an example, at Medsaf, we had to pick up cash. So one of our big original logistics problems was that we had to go and double pick up checks and cash. So we would deliver medications and then the check may or may not have been ready. And so we'd have to go back and pick up a check or cash. And so these are some of the harder problems. These are some of the problems that used to exist that made it, really hard to think about scaling outside of even just Lagos alone. People did not, the amount of transfers at that time were quite low. It was, the name of the game was writing checks, right? But definitely the fintechs, the rise of fintechs and all the innovations that have happened in the banking system have helped Medsaf really grow. Back in 2017, we were the first company, the first healthcare company to create a partnership with fintechs to finance our medication purchases. And so we early on had to, really embrace these other startups were helping to build crucial pieces of the ecosystem. So definitely fintech is important, but I think that from the investor perspective, if you're looking for, fintech is easy as well, right? So it's a no-brainer. It's not such a execution from a fintech perspective. It might not be as hard as company like Medsaf, right? That has much more moving parts. But that being said, it's just about finding investors that have the vision that fintech is first, right? But then what's second? What is now going to flourish off of the back of a really strong financial system? Those investors that get it, those are the ones that are going to make it, right? Because if the investors are just focusing on fintech, well, at some point, the industry is going to be saturated. But the investors who are thinking 5 steps ahead, those are the investors that are going to find the companies like Medsaf that have that need some of this infrastructure in place, but once that's in place, can really be even bigger than a lot of the fintech companies that we're seeing. It's those investors that are going to make it, in my opinion. So it's just about sorting through them.
Thank you so much, Vivian. I want to ask, there's a question here from Oyinlola and Yinka. They're pretty similar. So I want to ask if either of them would be happy to put on their video and ask the question live. Yinka Johnson or Oyinlola Anu, are either of you available to do this? If you are, the team will give you access.
Oh, yes. Hello.
Okay, great.
Hello.
Hi, Yinka. Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Yeah. My question is, how did they get the first funding and things like that to be able to scale up? I mean, where and how did you get the first funding, the very first funding that's pushed the scaling up? That the process of scaling up started, because I run a health tech company. It's called Medex Guide. It's a bit similar to Medsaf, but we are looking at medical devices.
Okay.
Yes, we're looking at medical.
So this is hardware, right, Yinka? Just to be clear, yours is hardware.
What do you say? Sorry.
It's yours hardware. Hardware. Are you more of a hardware technology company?
No. Medical devices. Well, hardware, yes. More or less hardware, yes. For supply, access to medications, access to medical devices, yes. So specifically, my question again is, how did they get their first funding and things like that to be able to scale up? How and and when did they get the first funding that enable them to scale up and the process to have continued to get to where they are? That's my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yinka.
Yinka, I mean, I had laser focus and obsession with making sure that Medsaf is this global entity. I felt a calling. I forgot earlier we talked about CARE, that acronym. Like literally that was everything in that acronym was just like what I was living and breathing. And so I had started years before. I actually came to Nigeria with the intention of creating a company that could improve the outcome, improve life for average Africans. I came on that concept that I'm going to be part of the success story of Nigeria. And so years before, I had already been scoping out the tech ecosystem. I was at all the conferences, I was, going to the meetups, and I was meeting people that were in all of these companies at the time that were making a splash, right? Like definitely the Jumia and a lot of these other companies at the time in 2017, 2016 that were really big in the tech ecosystem. I was everywhere that I could possibly be. And so from that, and then also from my own, my previous job, the work that I did in my previous career in the energy sector, I was able to get my boss, for example, my former partner and boss was one of our first checks. So I had a good relationship. I mentioned Bastian Goddard, who was one of our first angel investors, but I had also done work from an energy perspective for Iroko TV. So they were actually my customers. And so it was those early customers, people that I admired, I met one of our first Silicon Valley investor at a tech conference in Nigeria, in Lagos. They had flown in from San Francisco. So I was, at that time, I was really out there. And so the best thing I would say to you is to get out there as best as you can, and just really get in the face of people who can help, that you can learn from. Someone in the chat said, oh, some of the tech guys get successful and then they get snobbish. That's not the case at all. Like when you get more successful, it gets harder for you to be as accessible because of all the things that you've got going on and all the things that you're juggling, as well as, let's just face it, when you get more success, that's when more people come for you. I mean, people come for me every day. So, I have to, protect myself in a way. But the people who when I was in your shoes, I was just knocking at people's doors. I was just relentless. And it was that resilience and being relentless for the people that I needed to get in front of, that is the way that I was to get them to listen to me. But it's also because I had the empathy that they are really busy, that they are really successful, that they don't have that much time, and I've got to get right to the point. And I never felt like anyone owed me anything. Nobody owes you anything at all. And for those people at that time, there was kind of like a tech clique that I just wasn't a part of. I'm a female, I'm from Chicago, I just wasn't a part of this tech clique that was in place. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to build Medsaf around this clique. I don't need them. I'm going to pitch all over the world. And I did. I pitched all over Europe, the US, and Africa to raise my own profile so that people could know me outside of gatekeepers that may or may not want me to be successful. So you need to take it into your own hands, and you need to force your way into the situations that you want to be in, because you believe so much in yourself and in your company.
Thank you so much for that, Vivian. And I made some pointers here, and I'm sure that the social media team grabbed. You spoke about networking, spoke about getting out there. There are tech conferences that are being offline, online. You talked about attending conferences, getting in the faces of the people you want to back your company. And then you talked about pitching everywhere, which I really, really like as a pointer. If you feel like you're in an ecosystem that has a lot of gatekeepers, could you consider stepping outside of that ecosystem and finding other investors? And as we know, there are a lot of international and foreign investors who are interested in backing Nigerian companies, African companies. Look at Tiger Global, look at Sequoia Capital, look at YC. So there are people who are interested in doing that. So step outside of this ecosystem if you feel like it's being blocked off, and pitch everywhere. I really, really like that. Yinka, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
would like
thank
to
you.
bring one more person. Okay, great.
Yeah,
thank
thanks.
you so
Thanks
much.
a lot. Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Okay, there's someone here asking about how you and JP met. So I want to bring the person up. Edugi Abel. God, I hope I said that right. Are you there? Are you able to ask your question to Vivian and JP?
Hi, Vivian.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. So I really found the story about how they met was quite fascinating, because I'm also one of the guys, looking for support, through co-founders. So I'm just kind of wondering what it takes to meet people of like mind, and the events that led to Vivian meeting Joel. I don't know if I got his name correctly.
Yeah, I mean, so remember I told you guys that I launched a company with a lot of intention that had a framework that had been building for a couple of years, right? So, I knew that if I wanted to, I had people who I could see their growth. So I had many friends who also were in the startup ecosystem, and I had watched firsthand them building their own companies. And so I was able to just kind of learn from them and use my network to go to Portugal and be able to meet enough people to get to Joao. You know, so I had known that Rocket Internet was focused in Portugal. And if you remember at that time, that was Jumia was the biggest tech company for Nigeria, right? So I knew that that was where their developers were. And so I knew that I wanted to get there and explore, you know, meeting somebody who could become part of Medsaf from a tech ecosystem. And I think I met Joao through his ex-wife or something, you know, like, so it was like literally like, you know, like a couple of, you know, steps. It wasn't that someone that I just got to I landed in Porto and I met Joao. I think I had a couple of trips. I think I went to Portugal about 3 times before I actually met Joao. So
yeah, sorry to interrupt, and I wasn't actually even your first attempt at getting tech guys to work with in your project.
True. Yeah, true. Yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah,
you know,
it happened that you actually met my ex-wife because she was working at one of those companies.
Yeah.
And she just referred you to me. Yeah, talk to Joao. He may be able to help you because he sometimes do stuff for people. So why not?
Exactly. So so the intention was, okay, I'm going to check out Portugal because I know that they have developers that are working on Nigerian projects specifically. But I was just open. I mean, I think I probably went out to a ton of beer gardens and drinks and get-togethers before.
We call them bars.
Huh?
We call them bars.
Well, I just remember you guys drink a lot of beer, so you know, like
not that much. I've been in Germany.
Okay, fine. Anyways, but I went out. You know, I went out and I was hanging out with these guys. You know, really just singing karaoke, like, you know, getting to know people like from a personal basis, so that they would trust me enough to help me, and that was just how I did it. So I was very intentional to kind of embed myself in the Portuguese ecosystem, and to find Joao, which is, you know, his history is he is now here helping us Medsaf get to the next level, you know, many years later. So it's just about, you know, really just having the intention and then just being open-minded and flexible enough to you know, to hear it out, because it's coming to me. Yes, you know, Joao's wife, I think, was the one I was trying to get to join Medsaf, and she couldn't. So you know what I'm saying? So you just kind of have to really look around.
Thank you so much. Again, use your network. I think that's the most important takeaway from here. Use your network and try to get into the social spaces and professional spaces of the people that you want to work with you or to partner with you. Okay, so I have
let me just add something. Well, it's of course, this is basically networking is fundamental. It's also quite important, at least for me, and given my perspective. Vivian wasn't pushy about it. So basically, it's not like we go out for drinks and she is there with a common friend or whatever, and she approaches someone and said, "Look, you're the guy that builds software stuff. I have an idea for a website." It's not like that, and that approach doesn't work. I actually get sometimes people basically coming to me, and if they know who I am, I'm usually low profile. But if they know who I am, they either come to me to try to pitch some software idea, some new website idea, or to ask for recommendations or for jobs. And to be honest, that is annoying, because someone was saying something about people getting smuggy. It's not that. What happens is that your time is limited, and if, for example, if you go to a night out with your friends, if they are tech friends, you are discussing tech. Tech guys live for tech, but that doesn't mean that you are discussing specific business strategies, or that you are there to receive the pitches for specific products. So what I will recommend is exactly what Vivian did. It's basically let it go, and naturally the topic may arise, or you can try and schedule something with the person later on. Don't be pushy, because at least for tech guys, most tech guys basically hate that, and most tech guys that had a high profile will probably receive dozens or hundreds of solicitations per week, and that's not nice, because it gets annoying quickly. And I'm a blunt guy, so usually I don't react that well when people let's say bother me with stuff. That wasn't the case about Vivian, and this is the thing that is necessary to enhance. She was relentless, but she wasn't pushy. Okay, so by the way, in Portugal we have an international event every year that is called Web Summit. That didn't exist, at least in Lisbon at the time. And Web Summit actually has beer arrangements, so basically bar hopping for people to discuss new ideas with potential investors and whatnot. So we currently have a structured way of doing this every year. So if someone is interested, they should have a look at the Web Summit. It's a good way of enhance your network and to meet potential investors.
Thank you so much, JP. Thank you for adding your points. There's a question here about building systems and processes, and I believe that both of you can share knowledge here. JP from obviously a technical side and what it means to build technical business processes for a startup or a scale up, and then Vivian from the perspective of a CEO, right? Both positions are obviously very high level. So can both of you talk to us about how you were able to do that with Medsaf, especially taking your product from MVP in 2017 to where it is now? What role did building systems and processes play in seeing the product and the business grow in this way?
Yeah, it's literally the only reason that we're alive as a company is because the early focus was on, what is the customer's experience? What are their pain points? What are the pain points of all of the various players in the ecosystem? And how can we put the right framework and processes to reduce the friction and make it easy for these guys to do their job and focus on what their core business is, which is giving good quality healthcare. And so that was something that we were just laser focused on in the very beginnings of Medsaf. I would say that as the team has grown and as the company has scaled across the different markets across Nigeria, the biggest thing that I've realized is that you can't be so rigid in change and like letting go. And sometimes what worked when the team was much smaller, 18 people, just doesn't work when you have 50 people. It just doesn't work. And so, so I think that it's more of just the openness to constantly innovate around the process and constantly check in with the customers on whether or not you're still serving their needs, and how can you, kind of marry what their needs are with what you can actually do, and how can you move forward from there. And I think it's just a constant reanalysis over and over again. But the real reason that Medsaf had any success whatsoever is because we focused on processes and framework as literally the most important thing that we did on a daily basis. And that's the truth. Yeah.
Thank you, Vivian. JP, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, from a technical perspective, often people will come with problems like I need, for example, I need you to implement this specific functionality. And often what I ask, and probably Vivian will recognize that, is what problem are you trying to solve? So it's very important for non-tech people when they are trying to solve something to describe what is the problem, what is the goal that they are trying to achieve, instead of focusing on the process. For example, I need to be able to export this to Excel. Okay, but that's a common requirement. But probably you don't need to export that to Excel, because what happens is that you are using Excel or spreadsheet to do some calculations to then do some process within the internal platform. So your problem is you need those calculations done, but you are asking the tech team to implement a way of exporting to Excel. The tech team can actually implement the way of performing those calculations within the system. So it's very, very important to describe what is the problem itself, and not just what we think is the ideal solution, and have, of course, a good technical team that is able to come up with a solution. Because sometimes what you think is the best approach is the best approach, but other times you are just focusing on a specific issue that you have, but that issue can be resolved by eliminating completely that specific branch of the workflow.
Thank you, JP. So before I think we have time for about 2 more questions. But before we ask the last 2 questions and round up, we're going to insert a poll into Zoom in a few minutes, in a few seconds, excuse me. The questions in the poll are based on the conversation we've had here. So please answer the questions. They kind of help us guide how we plan our next sessions. And they also provide some level of feedback for JP and Vivian. Yeah, so you guys are filling out the poll, great. So while this is happening, I'd like to ask, I hope she's available, Peace Obute, if you're available to ask your question about funding and attracting investors after your first round of funding. I do think that's an interesting question. So Peace, if you're available, please feel free to unmute your mic and speak to Vivian and JP. Okay, I don't know if Peace is still on the call.
Yes, I unmuted my mic.
Okay, hi.
Hi, Vivian.
Hello.
Good afternoon. So, hi, Joe. Good afternoon. So I wanted to ask, how easy is it for you to attract more investors after your first few rounds of funding or your first round of funding? Does it become easier, or you still have to work as hard to get out to them, to meet them? Or after your first round of funding, they become more interested in what you're building? How does it happen?
Definitely the first round of funding was absolutely hands down the hardest fundraising round ever. And then I think that most likely we're going to, I think that's just the hardest round ever. And I think that the easiest round has probably been, around this kind of last round, even though it was disrupted by COVID-19. Only because we have something, right? Like we have, we actually have a great company. We have a great company that our customers really love, and that, continues to grow, even just by word of mouth, and, has a real need in the country of Nigeria. And so I think that the rounds get easier because you have something that someone can go and look at and say, this is real, this is actually impactful, and this is powerful. And I do or do not want to be part of this now, right? And they can really kind of make that assessment, and it's easier than when you don't have much of anything. And remember, we were first movers in the healthcare technology space in Nigeria. And so there wasn't even really any, there wasn't a path either. So that from that perspective, I would say the first round was harder, but I think that every round raising money is just not, raising money sucks. It's just not nice. Like it's not fun, right? Like just this is the honest truth. It just isn't, it's not a great experience, right? So overall, it's just always going to be hard, but definitely it's just really crucial if you are trying to scale your company and move quickly. You do need to raise, but to be honest with you, if I could have started Medsaf without raising money, I would have done that, gotten some of the things that needed to be in place without VC involvement, and then I would have brought it to market and raised money. So I would have done it differently if I could have. So I think that if you can, avoid raising money until you're ready to scale your company.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Vivian. Okay, so I'm going to take one more. JP, do you have any thoughts you'd like to add?
No, actually, I do. I have one.
Okay.
I agree with Vivian. It's way easier to basically for you to have some cash to bootstrap your business, but there is also something that is needed to be said. Keep in mind that most startups fail. Okay, so don't invest money that you actually need to live on, because it's very important to be able to pull the plug when things go south. And usually when you build a company and you invest your time, I've passed through that. You invest your time, and sometimes it's very, very difficult for you to identify the point where you basically need to shut it down, because it will drag you down financially if you don't stop at that moment. So if possible, have a cash reserve to start your business, but don't use your primary income to finance the business, because if it goes south and it doesn't work, because it may happen. You may think it's a great idea, but the market may have another opinion. So if it doesn't work, you need to be able to just move on, and so don't financially don't make it the center of your life, at least on a start perspective. I made that mistake once, and it was quite painful. But that's basically the biggest advice I can give financially. Vivian is the star of raising funds, but my advice, at least from my experience, when you use your money, use money that you don't need to live on. And also, it's quite easy to look at us and you see, okay, we are successful, it's working. We got through several financing rounds, but I remember the time where we applied for Y Combinator and were refused. Remember that, Vivian?
I don't care. We kept
going.
So, but
it's a process, you know. So it happened that one of the first, I don't know, international approaches that we took for financing was basically a flat out refuse. So don't give up, because history will remember success, but not the failures.
Yeah. And I remember being devastated, thinking, oh, you need Y Combinator to grow, to have a company in Nigeria. But then I thought about it like, wait, I left the United States. Why do I need a US entity to build a company in Africa? Like, is that really the way? So yes, does Y Combinator help? Absolutely. It would have made 1,000 things that we did much easier, right? So if you can get in and enjoy it.
Especially on the network part.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean success, because I think that there are quite a few Y Combinator companies that just didn't make it. And it's not the only way. So when we didn't get into Y Combinator, I doubled down on Seed Stars, who were also an investor in Medsaf, and was able to really kind of gain a lot of traction and awareness for Medsaf through the Seed Star ecosystem. So just find your own, place and just double down on it. We've had a ton of failures and a lot of challenges that it'd be really hard to spend no less than a day to go through every single challenge that we've ever had. Like, we've had some severe issues to overcome, but we've always just overcome them because we're focused on being successful at this one thing, which is making medications affordable and quality in an African context, because we deserve it. So we just laser focus, and so we just keep moving. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Vivian. That was really great as like a key takeaway. Double down and focus on building something that is going to impact people and communities. So my last question before we close off is just, what are you guys reading right now? Are there any books you'd like to recommend to any of the founders or entrepreneurs or future executive leaders on the call?
To be honest with you, I wouldn't say I'm reading so much, but I'm really studying the NFT and blockchain space and cryptocurrency space. I'm really studying it from a building of a community's perspective, and just how this new world that we're moving into is gonna operate. And I spend a lot of time just researching around that. This week I got my mom to open up her first Coinbase account. She's now trading, looking at it. So I was like, that's a success, that's great. So I'm really into that right now.
I love it. JP, what about you?
Yeah, honestly, I don't read that much these days. Mostly we are talking about technical books. I read a lot online. I follow basically the most well-known tech blogs. So news.ycombinator.com, Lobster, Slashdot, that kind of stuff. So usually I start my day by going through all the feeds for these blogs and see the relevant news about technical stuff. So mostly focus on that. I also often go through the national newspapers and sometimes the international newspapers. So CNN, BBC, that kind of stuff, the Guardian, that kind of stuff to keep up to date. But other than that, I try to basically to sleep and drink beer. So when I was younger, I used to read a lot of literature, but in the past few years, it has been quite complicated. So even tech books for me are a bit dense, in the sense that, for example, project management books, that kind of stuff, usually it's not something that you open to read a specific topic. It has a narrative, so you need to read it from the beginning to the end to understand the narrative and the context and whatnot. And what happens is that I usually don't have that time, that kind of time available, unfortunately. But I also see lots of YouTube stuff about basically everything from music to history. And lastly, the past days I've been seeing some Shark Tank videos, replays and whatnot. It's quite interesting. Basically, that's it.
Thank you so much. It feels like we don't always have enough time to read these days, which sucks. But love the idea of, find articles online and follow, leaders in whatever area you're interested in, and they usually share stuff. I'm going to recommend a book. It's called Crazy is a Compliment, and it's by Linda Rottenberg. She's the co-founder and CEO of Endeavor. And Endeavor is a global organization that backs high-impact entrepreneurs. So this book is amazing. She just pulls on stories from all the entrepreneurs that they've backed. She does research, all of that. I love it. So I'm going to recommend it. And it's pretty easy to get through. So we've come to the end. This was such a great conversation. There were so many questions we didn't get to answer. I'm really sorry about that. Hopefully we can get Vivian and JP again, and maybe we can take some of these questions, maybe a spaces conversation. So thank you guys so much for tuning in and for being interactive and for asking questions and even supporting not just Vivian and JP, but also the Tech Cabal team as well. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you, JP. Thank you, Vivian. We know that we try to make this timing work, and we really, really appreciate you. Sultan is going to share a post-event survey. He's going to drop the link in here in this chat box somewhere. And yeah, we'd really appreciate your feedback. Our next episode is going to be on January 21st, and we're going to be speaking with Judith Okonkwo. She's the founder of Emisi 3D. So if you want to learn more about this revolutionary business operating, again, this is not a fintech company. So this is someone else who is entering into the VR, AR world, and it's built by an African and Nigerian person. So it's really interesting. That's going to be on the 21st. And then we also want to thank the UK Nigeria Tech Hub for making this happen, for putting this together. This is their event. Tech Cabal is just an implementation partner. So thank you, UK Nigeria Tech Hub. Thank you for bringing or marrying the Nigerian and UK tech ecosystem and showing us that founders all around the world are facing the same challenges regardless of what their economic status, what the economic status of the country they're building for. Regardless of that, founders are founders and they're facing similar challenges and they're celebrating almost similar successes as well. So thank you so much. A video, yes, this session will be recorded. It's going to take us, I think, about a week or two to do post-production. So please be patient with us. Please follow the UK Nigeria Tech Hub on social media. I think there's a slide that is showing their social media pages now. It's a wonderful event. The actual implementation partners are the Tech Cabal Insights team. So thank you, Lanre, Bolu, Eniola, Fikayo, Mobolaji. The Tech Cabal Insights team, they are responsible for putting together data, research, anything that's connected to getting insights into what's happening, not just in Nigeria, but in the African tech and business ecosystem. They are responsible for that. I know that somebody had asked a question about market research and data research, how Vivian and JP were able to do that. Units like TC Insights help with that. So we need to see more of that in Africa. So thank you to the TC Insights team. If you'd like to see reports they've worked on in the past, just go to techcabal.com/TC Insights and you'll find out everything that you need to know. And then finally, we have a wonderful newsletter called TC Daily. It has a cult following. I'm not going to lie. It's an amazing newsletter, and I'm not just saying that. So if you'd like to know what's happening, in the tech and business world in Africa and, globally, you want to sign up for TC Daily. It goes out every weekday morning at 7 a.m. And a lot of work goes into it, and we hope that you enjoy it. And then finally, to JP and Vivian, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. And I believe that you're both on LinkedIn. If people want to follow you on LinkedIn to just stay updated on what you guys are up to and what Medsaf is up to. I hope you guys picked up on the fact that Vivian and JP are absolute warriors, and they're building something great, regardless of what role they play in the business. So I think we're really lucky to have heard from them, and we really appreciate them sharing their insights with us. Thank you, everyone. Yes, the session will be recorded. You will have access to it. Yeah. Vivian, JP.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Good luck, everyone. Bye.
Good luck. Goodbye.
Bye.